Hello YouTube and hello viewers, and welcome back to lesson 2 of creating our little social media API application. So last lesson, it was very complicated. There was a lot of stuff in there, and it was a lot of work, but hopefully you all managed to get through it. Again, take it nice and easy, take it nice and slow. Make sure you read the documentation on each one of those websites, and make sure that you get everything up and running as smoothly as you possibly can, I guess. So in this session, what we're going to do is we're going to look at creating our Laravel application. So we're going to actually use our Docker instance, and we're going to start adding our Laradock in. So if we just quickly open up the browser, so we're going to put our framework into our so-called Docker instance of our Laradock. At the moment, remember how we have a 404 page not found. That's because obviously it can't find anything, and we're not too sure where all the data is. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to set up multiple projects. So you can run this one instance of Docker. So you remember we did that Docker compose up. So basically that will build our application, our Docker, and then all our files and all our projects can all be in one place, which is nice and easy because if you have more than one project, we can just keep adding more and more on. And it makes things nice and easy, to be honest, when you keep adding more stuff onto it. So without further ado, let's get cracking. So first things first, I want you to open up the Docker UI. Again, if you just go down to your task menu, right click on your Docker, and then go onto your dashboard, you'll see that you have your Docker information here. And we're just going to hit the stop. So basically this will then stop all of these services that we have inside the container. I couldn't remember the name there for a second. Crazy me. So we're just going to wait for all of them to stop. Ignore this one because obviously this one's not going to work. And we're going to run a new docker up command anyways. But I'll show you that in a second. So if we just minimize this because we don't need it now. If we open up PHP Storm, you can remember that we had this Laradock file structure here. And at the moment, we have this env file that we added this information into, which was our DB host, our Redis host, and our Q host that was in lesson 1. What we need to do now is we actually need to set up our Nginx directories. So remember how we were getting this weird 404 not found? We don't want that to happen now. We wanted to look at specific things inside our Docker container. So to do that, we need to set up our sites in our Nginx. Now this is dead easy to do, really. It's not much work. Once you do it once, the next few steps after that is dead simple. We don't have to keep doing it over and over. Well, you do it once, and that's it. So in our Nginx directory, if you go projects, Nginx, you'll see that we've got a folder called sites. Now it's got a lot of these things with .example on, and we're going to actually take some of these off. The reason it being is because we need some of them. So the first thing we're going to take away is this Symfony one. So you can see it's got symfony.conf.example. We're actually going to rename that. So if you're using PHP Storm, you can right click, refactor, rename. And we're actually going to take that .example off because we want it to be actually working. So once we remove that, it'll be the symfony.conf. Once we've done that, we've got this laravel.conf.example. We want to remove that .example on that too. So we're going to refactor, rename, and we'll take that example out, and we'll just refactor that. So now we've got this laravel.conf, default.conf, and then we've got this app.conf.example. We want to do the same for this one. So we're going to refactor, rename, and just take this out. Remember, we only do this once, so you don't need to worry too much about this. So currently what we have is we've got app.conf, then we've got a default.conf, which is looking in this root directory, and this will all make sense in due course. And then we have all these, again, this is just another test directory that we can test into, and then again, this is just like a Symfony test. Now really, these conf files are just projects, if you had to think about it that way. So the project is like app.test. So if we had to go into a URL and type in app.test, it's going to look for this directory. And this directory is actually on our service, on our Docker service. And I'll show you exactly where those are in a second. So this is looking for app.test, and it's looking for var, www, and then /app. And it's going to index any of these pages first. We're not really too bothered about those ones. If we have a look at this Laravel one though, we've got one that's called laravel.test, and it's looking for var, www, laravel, public. Now in this case, we don't really have that right now. We don't have that set up inside our project, but we will shortly. But what we need to do is, with this Laravel conf, we need to be aware that the URL here is laravel.test. Now, if I had to put this into my browser, I hopefully don't have anything set up just yet for that. But if I open up my browser and run that, you'll notice that I'll just get my, obviously I'm with Virgin Media, but you'll see that I get just a weird page saying it's not found, because really it's not really a domain that we'll be using. But we can tell our machine that we want to use that as a domain on our machine. And to do that, we need to add that into our host directory. Now, to do that, you need to go onto your folder explorer. So we can just type Explorer in here, I guess. There you go, so File Explorer. And then inside here, just ignore all my weird stuff that I've got going on here, but we can go into your C drive. You want to go into, oh look, I've got XAMPP here. It's probably from ages ago. Program files. We're looking for wrong place here. Sorry, it's Windows. Sorry, Windows. And then we want to go into our System32 directory. Remember, you don't want to delete this one because that'd be a bad idea. You then want to go into drivers. And then we want to go to EDC. And then you'll notice we've got this thing called hosts. Now, the best idea is to open this up in Notepad. I've got a few things, so you've got Notepad here, but you want to make sure that you run it in Administrator if you can. So I'm just going to open up a Notepad. You'll get something very similar to this. Now, you'll notice that we have a few commented out bits and pieces here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my local host, which is 127.0.0.1. Here, this is the local host. So if I actually just copy that, I'm making a mess of this. So we've got this local host, but remember it's not called localhost. When we were looking at the actual application inside the Laradock, its actual name is called laravel.test. So if I copy that and paste that into my host directory here, like that. So now it's saying, if I put in laravel.test into my browser, for example, it's going to look at my local host anyways, but because I've got this directory, it's going to go and look for this root, and it's going to look for anything to do with www, Laravel, and public, and I'm going to show you exactly where that is shortly in a few seconds. But what we can do is we can save that. So just save it. Oh, I didn't run in administration mode, but if I say yes, started, and I'll just save again. This time it's in admin mode. So now we have that. If I had to run this laravel.test in my browser, wherever it is now, just run it into my browser, I still get the same thing again, but I think that's probably because it's cached. Maybe if I can run it incognito. So, and paste. Yeah, so there we see. We can see now we're not getting that weird issue anymore. We're saying, well, this site can't be reached, and that's because our Docker container is currently not on. It's not working. So what we're going to do now is, now that's all set up, we're going to go back to our little command terminal, and we want to go to where our folder directory is, so YouTube Social. Make sure that we jump into the Laradock folder that we created. That's going to be all our Laradock information, remember, because we've got everything in here. And then remember we ran that up command. So if you want to, you can press Control and R, which does a search. And if you just type up, you should get the nearest result. So in this case, we have Docker Compose up, D, Nginx, MySQL, PHP MyAdmin, Redis, and Workspace. I don't want PHP MyAdmin or Redis right now, so I'm actually going to take them out. And I'm just going to run Nginx, MySQL, and Workspace. It's just by preference. We'll start adding them in later on. You'll notice that we're going to add a few other things in, like Elasticsearch and stuff like that for future projects. But for now, we'll just focus on these. So once I press enter, this should spin them up, and that's how quick it. See, nice and quick now. We don't have to wait for ages. That's now spun up. That's my instance. And if you want to see them, you can run a command called docker ps. And this will give you all your containers and the names for each one of those containers. So we've got this Nginx container, we've got this PHP FPM container, this Laradock workspace container, MySQL, and then this Docker1 file. What we're more interested in is this workspace here. And we want to see what's actually going on with inside this workspace. So the best way to do it is we're going to do docker execute, then it, and then we want the number. So this number here, paste it in, and we're going to use bin. Oh, why is that not working? Have I done something wrong? Oh, it's bash. Sorry, it's not bin, it's bash. So you're going to do docker execute it, then the number. So I normally say docker execute initiate number and then bash, which is like the command interface that we're using. And basically you'll see that we're now in this directory, this var www. Now remember, var www, if we go back to that code, it was looking for, if I'm going to this Laravel test, I want to go to this var www Laravel public. Now, public is something that comes from the Laravel framework, but we can see that we're going to have this Laravel project that needs to be installed onto this var www. But if we have a look at something cool, so if we go back to that, oh, I got rid of it. But if we go back to the command and do an ls, you'll notice we've got Laradock in here, which is quite interesting. Now remember, Laradock is not part of our container because we're in our container. See this root? This is because we're in the container inside the Docker container. So if I type exit, that'll take me out the container and I'm now back in Laradock. So if I actually go back a directory, so cd ... and do an ls, there's that Laradock. So that's really interesting because basically what's happening is it's made a file system off my system saying, okay, I'm going to look at everything inside that directory, right? And I can put whatever I like in it. And I can put any folder structure and I can still pick it up. So let's do a test. So if I do make directory, I'm going to just call it test. So this is saying I'm going to make a folder called test ls. We'll see we got a test. Remember, if we do Control R, and if I just shorthand execute again, we can just press enter. Do an ls. You'll notice we have test here. So we can set up each one of our projects quite nicely here. We can just use this root of YouTube Social and or whatever you wanted to call it. And you could put all your projects inside this root directory and you can just use them. Nice and easy. It's probably the easiest system I've found so far. But we know that it's not working with tests, so we don't really want to use that. What we actually are using for this in particular is Laravel public. So how do we get this? Well, it's nice and easy, to be honest. If we just exit out of here and we'll just actually, let's remove that directory. So rm-rf. So that just removes the folder. And we want to remove the folder called test because we don't need it. ls, it's now gone. It's kind of like chucking in the recycle bin if you had to think about it that way. Just do a Control L so we get back up to the top. So if we jump over onto our Laravel documentation, which is dead cool, and we're just going to go to documentation. And we're going to be using version 7, which is the latest version. You can see there's loads of different versions here, but we'll just use the latest one. And straight off the bat, we've got this installation. Now, this is using Homestead, which is a different virtual environment. That if you want to, you could go through this documentation and use this one if you want. It's entirely up to you. But we pretty much skipped all that and we're doing it on a Docker Compose. And really what we want to do is we want to just run this command here. So this command is basically using Composer. So if we have a look on my machine, I've got Composer installed on my machine. If you don't have it, you're going to probably have to download it and install it on your machine. Oh, that's probably why I've got WAMP actually, was for that PHP version. So I've downloaded WAMP and then I attached my PHP because Composer needs PHP. If you don't, you can quite easily go onto the actual Docker instance and you can actually run Composer on there if you wanted to. So it's really up to you of how you want to run it. It's either way, you just have to download Composer. Dead easy. If you just type in Composer for Windows, it will tell you exactly how to download it. And it's dead straightforward. It's not very difficult to do. You just have to read the documentation and go through it. Again, don't forget these tutorials are more for people that kind of understand PHP and know how to work with these bits of pieces of software. So now we've got that ready. We're going to actually run this composer. Now this is saying composer, we're going to create a new project inside its destination. We're going to call it Laravel. It's going to be Laravel instance project. And we're going to create a directory called blog. Now, in our case, the directory is not called blog. In our Laradock, it's actually called Laravel. So we're going to change that blog to be Laravel. So if we just copy that, go into our directory, right click, and we're just going to call this Laravel. Press enter. And what will happen is it'll start creating a project inside our YouTube social with a folder called Laravel, like so. Oh, I've made a mistake. I've spelled it incorrect. We can change it in a minute. It's not much of an issue, but we just have to wait for it to install. It's going to pull everything. Now, it's very important that you have this composer, because if you didn't have this composer, you'll probably get an error. It'll say, I don't know what composer is. If you do get that, then just download it, or like I showed you, and it should be dead easy to get up and running. So this could take some time because it needs to pull all the dependencies and pretty much installing a full project into your directory. But I'm probably going to uninstall it. Actually, I'm probably going to delete it and then reinstall it again because I made a mistake with the file name. So whilst it's doing a thing, I'm just going to pause the video and I'll come back to you once it is ready to go. Okay, so now that's all complete. You can see that it's installed all this cool stuff. So it's pretty much these all packages. Again, we'll explain all this, when we get to that point. I mean, there's no need to really worry about it right now. But basically, Laravel is just built off all these packages that makes it do cool things. Let's just pick one out the hat here. So for example, Guzzle is going to be very important for us because we're going to make a few requests using Guzzle. Tinker, we can just do things on the fly. Just some really cool things that we can use with these packages, and I'll show you how we install more packages later on in our projects. How to make things a lot more nicer, and how we can use it a lot more better. Cause stuff, and I mean, there's loads of different carbon. There's loads of things we can use. So I went ahead and renamed my directory. So you can see that we've now got Laravel here. So if we do an ls, we can see that we've got Laravel. cd into the Laravel directory. Oops, I couldn't spell correctly. Well, if we do an ls, you can see that we have all this information, and you'll notice in Laravel, we've already got this public directory. Now remember, originally in this Laradock, it was looking at var www Laravel and public, and we obviously needed this Laravel test. So if I had to open up an incognito mode again and run this, so you'll see that we now have a Laravel instance of Laravel running. Pretty cool, huh? Dead simple, dead easy. Now let's say, for example, I wanted to, create like just a random website, like something really random. It's dead simple. All you have to do is go into this document and just copy this. So you just right click, and we're gonna just copy the file. And I'm gonna call this, test YouTube, right? So just call it testyoutube.conf, and I'll just use the same name for this. So test YouTube, like that. And all I want to do is also I want to change test YouTube in the directory here. So I'll just do var www and then test YouTube. Save it. Dead simple, dead easy to do. You go into your host file. We do the same line again. So I just press Control D then. I'm going to copy this name. So test YouTube here, paste it into there. And then if I had to run this in incognito mode now, so we go into incognito mode. Again, you'll see we don't have, because nothing can be found. But let's say, for example, I go into my terminal, cd./ls. You'll notice that I don't have anything that has the folder structure of what we had here, which was this test YouTube. So we need to make a directory called that. So make directory, and then we're going to call it test YouTube. Now we've got test YouTube on our screen. I'm going to cd into that, and I'm just going to do a bit of nerdy stuff, and I'm going to say touch index.html. So this is going to create us a file inside this test YouTube called index.html. We open it up. So we do an ls. We can see we've got index.html. If I refresh this page, nothing's going to happen because we have to reset our Docker instance. So, and I don't really want to do that now, but basically you'd have to go into Docker, stop it. So it stops all your instances. So all these will then stop again. And then you run it again with the docker up command, and then your test YouTube will be working with that index.html, which will just be a blank file with nothing in it. But we're really more interested right now that we managed to get Laravel working on our instance like so, using Docker with a simple install. So we can see that we've got Laravel here, we've got some links to some stuff, and it was dead easy. It didn't take very long, and this is now local on our machine. That's pretty much setting up Laravel in our Docker instance. I hope you follow through with that. Nice and easy, this one, to be honest, not so long this episode. Really about installing our Laravel. Remember, if you don't have Composer, you need to get that installed. You might need XAMPP to install PHP, so you're probably going to need that. If you do struggle with that, again, come into the comment section. If you're really finding it difficult, probably find someone that has a YouTube video on it. And I hope to see you guys in the next episode where we actually start looking at setting up the database and stuff for this project. And yeah. All right, guys, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.